How we doing there, boys and girls? Manthieus here, and welcome back to another video. I was just playing around. I was just doing some tinkering on the beta. I seem to have this uncanny habit of trying to record videos at 1 o'clock in the morning. I promise I'm not going to keep doing this. I promise to myself I'm not going to keep doing this. But Blizzard have gone and they've posted a little, a news post that I wanted to have a little bit of a look through. Making it with professions. They seem to be giving people a bit of an update to what the new profession system is, and I wanted to have a little bit of a read through this. I've literally not looked at it. This is going to be fresh reactions, fresh as a daisy. I tend to do a lot of this sort of content for the live stream. I don't do too much like this for YouTube, so I thought I'd throw up OBS, I'd do some recording, and we'd have a little bit of a look through this together. So what have Blizzard got to say? Making it with professions. Dragonflight introduces a new and updated profession system in World of Warcraft, providing greater depth and engagement whilst allowing the crafters of Azeroth a way to differentiate themselves and stand out from their peers. I really hope we get some answers to some of the questions here. This could be quite interesting. They start with a good one. They start off talking about crafting orders. I'm still in the habit of calling them work orders for some reason, but they are technically crafting orders. So crafting orders are a new way for you to place an order for almost any Dragon Isles crafting recipe using an auction house-like interface. Why they didn't just attach it to the auction house, I have no idea. This new service will be provided as a nearly free of charge by representatives of the Artisans Consortium. The thing to note here is it's the regular auction house 5% fee, at least from what we can gather. They're going to charge exactly the same as what you would do for either buying or selling something on the auction house. By the representatives of the Artisans Consortium. This is a new faction. It's the Crafters faction come Dragonflight. You'll get quite well acquainted with these over the next few days and weeks, I assume. A new trade organisation recently founded with its first branch in the Dragon Isles. Okay, so we can see the work order system. It's interesting to me how little this interface has actually changed from a design perspective from the very early days when we originally saw it. I love the fact that they've kept this note to crafter section. One thing I was almost convinced of was that they would can that because you know full well it's just going to be twitch.tv/Manthieus every time. And some of the notes that you're going to get are going to be quite spicy, I can imagine. But, you know, it's cool all the same. You can put your commissions in. The commission auto goes by whatever the recent posts are. And there's a posting fee to list the order. So the posting fee plus the commission. I wonder if the posting fee is a percentage of the total price. Because it's definitely more than 5%. I've not worked that sort of stuff out. I guess we will find out eventually. What have they got to say about these then? When placing an order, there are 3 options that players can set for who to fill it. You can put it out there to the public, you can put it out there to your guild members, or you can post a personal order. For public orders, the player requesting the creation of the item will need to provide the tradable materials. It's interesting that they didn't use the word all there. That's actually one of the key aspects. Public orders require you to provide all of the materials. Both the bind on pickup, Sparks of Ingenuity are bind on pickup, Primal Chaos are also bind on pickup, and any of the regular, intermediate, or basic materials also need to be provided if it's a public order. I really think they should have emphasized that. Guild and personal orders can be provided by the requester or the craftee. For guild and personal orders, the materials can be provided by the requester or the crafter. Yeah, that's the differentiation there, that if you put in a guild or a personal order, the only materials you do always have to supply are the Sparks of Ingenuity and the Primal Chaos. But if you go out of your way and you find a crafter first, if you find somebody that's willing to do it for you, and you agree on something beforehand, you send them a personal order, and at that point, you know, based upon what you agreed, maybe that crafter's got some spare top quality tier materials that they're willing to sell you on the cheap or something, you never know. In particular, soulbound reagents will often need to be provided by the requester when placing an order for a soulbound item. Yes, as we've described. Players will also be able to customize the order further by including various optional reagents depending on the recipe, dictating exactly what you want to be crafting. For example, many equipment recipes allow secondary stats to be specified. This uses the same missive system, or a similar missive system to what we had in Shadowlands. The missives were a legendary predominant thing. You could use the missives on the crafted gear, but it was very, very uncommon to do. This time round, it's going to be quite popular, I reckon. I reckon scribes are going to have quite good business, I reckon, selling these missives throughout the expansion, as people are going to... When the crafted gear is going to be quite restricted but specialized, I think it pushes people into that mindset a lot more of like, right, okay, if I get this crafted, I want haste and I want crit on it. You know, people will have their secondary stats of choice, and so specifying those optional reagents will be key. You also, with the optional reagents, get the ability to utilize the item level increasing optional reagents as well. That's going to be a massive thing. That probably isn't going to be too much of a thing when you first craft the item, but there's a recrafting system that I hope they'll go through a little bit in this article as well. The recrafting system will allow you to give that piece of gear back to a crafter using a very similar system to this, and that's where you can tweak and you can change optional reagents. This primal infusion will actually mean that this will be made at heroic item level. Primal infusion pushes it to heroic. Concentrated primal infusion will push it into mythic item level banding. Once an order has been finished being customized, the requester will decide on an offered commission to the crafter, pay a small posting fee, and send it off. Having the person looking to place the order to set the commission is a real it's a real sticky situation for most crafters out there, because it doesn't give you much control. At least with the regular auction house, you have you can make that decision, right? You can decide, right, well, I've made this thing, I gather the materials, I leveled up the profession, I did the rep grind to get the pattern, so I've crafted everything, I've done a lot of the hard work, I'm going to sell it for whatever it cost, plus something. And you put it on the auction house and either somebody buys it or they don't, or you get undercut. This time round, crafters still have to do the lion's share of the hard work, but the buyer gets to sort of dictate to the crafter how much they pay. It's not a usual system, and I'm surprised they kept it this way, but we'll see how it plays out. Crafters can then view these orders, fill in any of the missing reagents if it's a personal one, craft the item, collect the commission, minus, once again, a small cut for the Artisans Consortium, of course. Then the finished item will be delivered to you in the mail. So you get it instantly. This is one thing we did notice through testing this. There's not that 60-minute sort of delay. You get the item will be, you get the commission instantly, they get their item instantly. There's no delay with this, which is quite nice as well. This is great news for crafters to earn gold, increase their skill in the professions, and most importantly, help craft for friends and guildmates. This is all going to be, hopefully, smooth process. There are a few concerns I still have with the crafting orders. Any regular viewers of the channel will know that I've had been on a bit of an emotional roller coaster with the crafting orders. At some point, I've gone through the mindset of this is just dog doo-doo, let's just get rid of this quickly. They made some changes. I came around to the ideas, they tweaked it a little bit. It's still by no means perfect, but I do think that with a few slight tweaks going forward, hopefully Blizzard have got plans for this. I do think the crafting order system can be pretty good if they get it all right. Next then, they want to talk about the profession specializations. Profession specializations will allow crafters to specialize in their primary crafting and gathering professions once they reach a high enough skill. You will earn specialization knowledge through a variety of activities and get to spend it on improving different areas of your profession permanently. I love the fact that they've used the word permanently in this. To give some to give my 2 cents on this, the gathering of the knowledge is going to be the bottleneck. Quite clearly, this is going to be the major bottleneck for most people. There's a big upfront zerg of knowledge points through leveling your profession. You get first time craft bonuses, and each time you craft something for the first time, you gain a knowledge point. And when you're out in the world exploring, you find a few knowledge points. There's a few treasures you can pick up that will give you knowledge points. You have your weekly quests that will give you knowledge points. There's a multitude of different sources to get these knowledge points, but quite quickly you'll come to run out of them and you'll want more of them. And they are somewhat time gated in how many of them that you can get. When you do then choose where to spend them, it's good that they did choose to use this word permanently. There's no undo button. There's no reset. Unlike talents, there's no way to sort of go back to zero and reset. Even, this is a question that many people have asked, even if you drop that profession. So say in this scenario, they're a blacksmith and they've put a bunch of points in. If they drop blacksmithing and then take blacksmithing back up again, they will still have their specialization tree in the way that they left it. All the points will still be spent in the exact same place, and they'll still have any outstanding points that they had. There's absolutely no way to reset your spec points. This is going to mean in the first few days, weeks, months of the expansion, when you are permanently chasing your tail when it comes to knowledge points, you always are going to want more of them. Placement of these talent points is going to be really critical. But luckily, my opinion of this at least is luckily you can never go too wrong. There's no one single directional path you can go that's going to use so many points that you can't recover from it. You might put yourself a couple of weeks behind somebody else, but eventually you'll catch back up to them. The actual depth of the trees is quite shallow. You know, it's never more than sort of 40 or 50 points deep, but you've got many different choices. So the spec trees are wider, whereas things like talent trees are usually very tall. So you can kind of get away with not having a reset. And they want you from a sort of an RPG standpoint to, you know, be a blacksmith that specializes, you know, in making weapons, for example. It's interesting they chose to showcase the blacksmithing here, as I've been recently telling everybody that blacksmithing is going to be really, really good. And I suspect, it's just one person's opinion, of course, but I suspect quite heavily that most people who are going to engage with this system in a serious fashion and try to optimize their gear are very much likely going to want to have a crafted weapon. But that's a topic for another day. Let's see what else have we got here then. This will be one of the main ways that crafters can differentiate themselves from their peers, as there will be many different areas of each profession to specialize in. Yeah, any single blacksmith, you could line up 10 different blacksmiths and they'll all have spent their points in a slightly different way. They'll all have different recipes. They'll all have different crafting costs as well. This is going to be critical for the gold makers out there, that the more you specialize in one area, realistically, the cheaper it will be for you to craft those items at the same time, meaning that somebody that's not quite as specialized won't have the ability to craft the same. They might be able to make the same item as you, but they may not be able to make it quite as cheaply as you can, and that profit margin is where you can make your gold for sure. It's going to be a cool system. I'm looking forward to playing with it a lot. What do we got next then? We've got crafting with gathering and quality. Okay, nice. Crafting with quality. New to World of Warcraft is the concept of crafting quality, both for crafted items and for many gathered reagents. This is not to be confused with rarity, such as common, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary, which remains unchanged and isn't directly related to crafting quality. Yeah, you still get your greens, you still get your blues, you still get your perps, and there presumably will be legendaries maybe at some point in Dragonflight. It'd be cool if we have some legendary like profession tools or something. That could be, maybe we don't need legendary gear again. We've just done that a lot, but maybe some like profession tools that are up to legendary quality could be quite cool. Crafted equipment will have 5 levels of quality, whilst many other crafted and gathered items such as potions, ores, will have 3 levels of quality, and you can see the item, the way that they're differentiating them. These little items pop up on a bunch of the gear, on a bunch of your tooltips. We'll show this as well. For crafted equipment, quality primarily modifies the item level. For each level of quality, increasing it by a small amount. For example, a piece of crafted leveling gear might be item level 306, 308, 310, then stepping up to 313 and 316. Those are actually numbers that are old. They've copy-pasted this from a past. I can tell they've copy-pasted this from somewhere else. Those numbers are old now. They don't apply anywhere. But either way, it does go to show. It steps up in small amounts, quality 1, 2, and 3. It's usually a 2-item level difference. And then it's often a 3-item level jump when you start making the quality 4 and quality 5 stuff. In all cases, the goal is to have quality matter enough for it to be worth your effort to achieve the higher qualities without having the gains being so large that the lowest quality versions don't feel worthwhile. A really, really fine system to balance. And at least from many, many hours of testing this on the beta, the one thing I can say is so far, I think they've kind of got it right. They've made it so that quality 5 is going to be obtainable. It's going to be by far the most costly one. If you want to have all of your crafted gear at quality 5, it's going to cost you. It's not going to be cheap, but there is a cheaper option that's not too far behind, and that's going to be your quality 4 gear. And novice crafters will work through 1, 2, and 3 quite quickly without it really costing them. And because of the work order system, you don't strictly need to craft items to get better at making them. It's all based on the skill system. It's all based on those knowledge points. So unlike legendaries where you physically had to craft 4, 5, 10, as many as 15 items before you'd unlock the next quality, they've scrapped all of that business. You just need to work at becoming a better crafter in some way, and you'll naturally, without actually crafting anything, push your quality level up, which is quite good. For crafted items such as consumables that have quality, the effects of quality are a little bit more varied. For most, the higher quality will result in a more powerful effect, but in some cases it might come in other forms of variation, such as a longer duration, more charges, etc. Alchemists are going to love this. Alchemists are going to have an absolute field day. The variancy between quality 1 and quality 3, like potions and vials, can be really quite dramatic. Quality 2 potions are going to obviously sit in the middle, and they're going to be the ones that you're going to see flooding the auction house. But those alchemists and those commodity crafters, this could be jewel crafters with their gems, this could be enchanters with their enchants, they're going to have to work quite heavily to make quality 3 stuff, but once again, I think they've balanced it nicely so that it will actually be worth people pushing to that degree. For the reagents that have quality, the quality value will serve as a major input into crafting. Crafting with higher quality basic reagents will directly provide bonus skill when crafting the item. A little bit more on that below. Finishing reagents are a new type of reagent that can be used to improve aspects of the crafting process, increasing skill or crafting stats, for instance. Higher quality versions of these will have strong effects on crafting. The big one that they don't really talk about too much, which is a new finishing reagent, is an item that uses artisan's metal, and it uses artisan's metal in large quantities. Artisan's metal is another soul-bound material that's going to be really sought after. I've done some videos quite recently on artisan's metal, so jump back a few videos on the channel if you want to find out a little bit more. But artisan's metal goes into making a really powerful finishing reagent that does nothing to the end item other than make you as a crafter 30 skill points better in your profession when you craft it. This is proving to be the difference between some crafters being able to easily make quality 4 and being able to craft quality 5. In many cases, you have to be using these finishing reagents to get the creme de la creme, the top quality materials or pieces of gear especially, need these finishing reagents in some way, shape or form as well. Not all gathered reagents will have quality. The core reagents gathered by the primary professions, e.g. mining, ores, skinning, being skins, scales and hides, and the herbalism's herbs, will have quality, as well as reagents crafted by those primary professions. So your cloth bolts, your metal alloys, etc. will all have quality. Other reagents, though, such as meat, cloth, fish, and the elements that can be gathered will not have quality attached to them. So whilst quality is going to play a big part, it's not everything. It's not absolutely slapped everywhere. If you're just sticking to some basic fishing and cooking some food for yourself, you won't have to worry about the quality aspects there too much. But trust me, it's not too long before you do stumble across something that has different quality levels, and with different quality levels will come different prices, and you will need to choose which one you decide to use. This is where I hope we might get some extra little, get some goodies. Determining the quality, the crafting process. So when crafting an item, there's two main elements of note here. There's the recipe difficulty, which is going to determine how hard it is to craft a recipe at higher quality. Recipe difficulty will also change when you use optional reagents, which can modify it up or down depending on the effects and qualities, sometimes significantly. You can kind of see that up here. You can kind of see that here, that when these optional reagents have been used, this will, both of these being put in the order, will make it much, much, much more difficult for the crafter to make it at a higher quality. In this scenario, the likelihood is that by using a primal infusion and by using this missive, would probably add, if my maths is correct, about 45 extra difficulty. That could be the difference between 1 or 2 quality levels. So there's a bit of a trade-off sometimes, until you find that really good crafter, at least anyway. There's a bit of a trade-off that if you want to increase the item level, the quality might drop by 1 or 2 points. Or if you want to specify the secondary stats, you might not be able to craft it at quite as high a quality once again, until you get, you find that absolute baller of a crafter who's got so many skill points behind them that they can craft the best of the best with all of these extra bonuses and still make you something at top quality. Those guys are going to be quite rare, and those are going to be the guys and girls, of course, who will be making the big money in the early days. Those that really specialize in one direction will have an absolute field day with this system. It's going to be fun. Where did we get to then? Where did we get to? Crafting skill is determined by the base skill the character has in their profession, e.g. Dragonflight's tailoring, but can be modified by a variety of factors, including which reagents are used, the finishing reagents, profession gear with skill bonuses, various bonuses provided by consumables, and most significantly, the profession specialization. So you can quite quickly see there's a lot that goes into the crafting side of things. You're juggling, as a crafter, you're juggling many things. You're trying to increase your base skill in the profession. You're trying to make sure that you're having access to the best quality materials to bump that skill bonus as high as possible. If you're really trying to push into the next quality level, let's say you can normally make something at quality 3, but you really want a quality 4 one, maybe you can look at using some special finishing reagents to give you that little boost on that one craft, pushing you into the next band, and even, gearing yourself out. You've got 3 profession slots. 1 for a tool and 2 accessories that you can equip that in turn can also add bonuses to your crafting ability. You're going to need to pile all of these on top to become that best crafter, which is quite cool. As you craft your item, there is a small amount of randomness added to your skill roll to represent the natural variation in your crafting execution. Wow, okay. I had suspected this for a long time. Over the last couple of weeks and probably months at this point, not only me, but many of the people in the community, could be you if you're watching this now, have been trying to work out exactly how these stats work behind the scenes. Because there has been circumstances where if a recipe says you need 100 skill to craft it at top quality, and you have exactly 100 skill, sometimes you still don't craft it at top quality. And it led me to believe that there's like a +5, -5 modifier behind the scenes that is kind of invisible to us that we don't see. This goes about as far as we can take it to, confirm that. That sometimes, even if you do just have the skill, you're going to have to push much past the threshold. So if you need 100 skill to make something, you're probably going to need like 105, 106, 107 to really guarantee that you'll make that quality item every time. Quite cool, I guess. It's the equivalent of, if you're making a piece of armor, it's the equivalent of, you slip with the tool and you put a big scratch in it or something. I guess it's the RPG side of it for sure. In addition, if you have any inspiration, one of the new crafting stats, you have a chance to become inspired, gaining a significant amount of bonus during your craft. This is a proc-based system. Whilst they call it inspiration in game, my inner gamer brain just thinks of it as luck. Sometimes you just make something and you get lucky, and you make something with a bonus skill. This is interesting though, as this is really not going to have that much of an effect when we start crafting the high-end stuff, because of course we're using the work order system, where inspiration doesn't really apply. You can't take that order and you can't fill that order unless you can already guarantee that you can make it at the quality that they've requested. So inspiration becomes a little bit weird. But for some of the professions, namely the ones that are making consumables, your alchemists, your your alchemists, your jewel crafters, your enchanters, people who are making things that are going to be made in mass, that are going to go on the region-wide auction house. This is where inspiration for those guys is really, really powerful. At the end, the final crafting skill will be compared against the recipe difficulty, and if that skill is higher than the difficulty, you will craft the item at maximum quality. Otherwise, the quality will depend on where your skill falls comparatively. You'll need to match the recipe difficulty if you want the top quality crafts. Additional crafting stats then. In addition to your primary crafting skill, there are several secondary stats that can affect the crafting of new Dragon Isles recipes and which gear can be specialized towards. These are as follows. Inspiration, we talked about that just a second ago. A percentage chance to become inspired, crafting the recipe with extra skill. Inspiration is for those of you who love rolling the dice and getting lucky. You see, I told you, like, to me, it's just, it's luck, but just in disguise. Getting lucky and getting some bonus quality. It's a way to craft items at higher quality than your normal natural skill or a specialization would allow you to when getting lucky. I think for reference, most professions start with like a default 5% luck. If you spec towards gaining more luck, or you kit yourself out with the correct profession tools to give you more luck, in extreme circumstances, you can push your inspiration to about 20, 25, maybe 30% if you really go ham. So you could never get to the point where you're getting inspiration procs every time, but it's definitely going to make a difference. If you as a crafter have, 20% inspiration, and you're competing against somebody else on your server that's only got 10% inspiration, it goes to show you're going to make those higher quality crafts more frequently, more reliably. You'll have a much better chance at finding customers in that scenario, I would suspect. Resourcefulness is the second spec. This is going to give you a chance to use fewer reagents. So if it takes 10 pieces of ore, 3 pieces of, cloth, whatever, on occasion, you'll save a few pieces of materials. This is another proc-based system. Multicraft works in a similar way, but just in the opposite direction. Resourcefulness is saving you materials. Multicraft is giving you the chance to proc bonus ones. Only works on recipes that stack, though. So this is going to be things like potions. Once again, alchemy. Alchemists are going to love things like multi-craft. Where you would normally craft 5 potions, I've seen multi-craft proc up to 20 potions in one craft. 4 times as many when multi-craft does kick in. That's a rarity. That's not going to happen every time, but it goes to show what can happen. Can anybody say Silas? Just out of curiosity. We've long loved the feeling of crafting extra items from various abilities, a little bit like Potion Master from back in Burning Crusade. Multi-craft cements this as a permanent crafting stat for those of you that love that moment of crafting that little bit extra. Crafting speed's also a thing. They're sneaky with crafting speed. I can tell you this now. They've been crafty with the crafting speed for the reason that there's they've slowed everything down naturally. A lot of, especially scribes are going to love crafting speed because making inks is slow as all hell to begin with. And you stack up some crafting speed just to get back to where you were previously. So crafting speed is a bit of an odd one. People don't really care about it too much though, to be honest. Through testing, inspiration, resourcefulness, and multi-craft, they're the 3 that you really want to pay attention to. But there we go, there's some crafting stats. There is actually some gathering stats that they seemingly don't want to talk about just now, but they do exist. Gatherers have a few little bonuses to give a greater yield to when they, if you go find a herb, you pick a herb, normally you might get 4 or 5 herbs. You can stack a bonus, I think it's called finesse, or deafness, one of the two. There is a stat you can pick up as a gatherer, so that occasionally you'll pick up 5 or 6 herbs instead of 3 or 4 herbs, for example. Gatherers do get some love with some bonus stats as well. Powerful crafted equipment then. What have they got to say here? In Dragonflight, there are many recipes for extremely powerful crafted equipment. Every primary crafting profession can craft 1 or more pieces, all of which work under a shared system with the following attributes. Some of the items have more powerful effects and are labelled as embellished. Others do not, but can have optional reagents that add a powerful effect, making them embellished. While you can wear as many unembellished items as you want, you may only equip 2 embellished items at once. This is denoted in the tooltip. You just see the word embellished and then a number in brackets. Any item that you craft that has like an on-equip effect, for example, is usually embellished, and often if you add an optional reagent to it, it will turn a non-embellished piece into an embellished piece. So you've got to be careful of that, and especially since you can only craft 2. This means you can't have bonus effects on every single piece of crafted gear. I guess it's to kind of, keep crafted gear in check a little bit, otherwise it might get a bit out of hand if you've got procs going off left, right and centre. We'll be back to BFA again and preach with his 25 dice rolls in one go. All of them start at near the item level range of normal raids though. Most of the endgame gear is 380. Oh, I should really remember this off the top of my head, shouldn't I? I think it's 382. 382 is the normal crafted gear that we get there. When you first unlock a pattern, that's what you're going to be crafting at. It goes from 382 to 392 or 393. I've probably got those numbers slightly wrong, but there's a 10 item level difference between quality 1 and quality 3. Through earned optional reagents, they can be brought up to heroic or even mythic raid levels, making them competitive with some of the best gear you can find. The very top crafted gear is going to be item level 418. Now, this is not quite as high as the 424 that I think is possible from the raid, but of course that's going to only drop from the last couple of bosses in the raid. This is going to put crafted gear in a really competitive spot for Dragonflight, especially since you can get a piece of crafted gear and then over time look to upgrade it. You don't have to get that perfect piece of gear straight away and worry about having to replace it after. There is a recrafting system that they might touch on in a minute. That recrafting system will allow you to take the piece of gear that you've already made, give it back to a crafter, and let that crafter have another go, or allows you to put some extra bonus optional reagents that you've now gained on that single piece of crafted gear and boost it in stats. I have the theory, we don't know this for certain right now, but I do have a suspicion that we might take these pieces of crafted gear throughout the entire expansion. We might have to continuously look at upgrading and recrafting our gear as we go from one tier of content to the next. Obviously, you go into a new raid and there'll be a bunch of new shiny items, but our crafted gear might follow with us, which I think could be quite cool. All of the endgame pieces of gear, though, are soul-bound, so you will need to either craft them for yourself with your professions, or have somebody craft them for you with a crafting order. We've looked at that a little bit already. Each piece of crafted equipment will require several soul-bound reagents that you need to earn to craft it, and to further improve it with optional reagents. The first of these is Primal Chaos. Primal Chaos will come from various challenging activities, including dungeons, raids, PvP, and even a little bit of adventuring in some of the dangerous outdoor areas. World quests is what they really want to say there for reference. If you need to earn a fair amount of this reagent to craft a piece of equipment for more significant pieces, a second reagent, the Spark of Ingenuity, will come from a series of quests that will award you with enough to craft one piece of equipment. This is the most time-gated of all of the materials, the Spark of Ingenuity. I've done lots of videos recently. I did another video a couple of days ago talking about the Spark of Ingenuity. The TLDR to this is that you get one when you hit level 70. When you first ding level 70 and you finish the campaign, you'll get your first Spark of Ingenuity, so you'll probably get that in the first couple of days. You won't get your second one, though, until Season 1 starts, so 2 weeks into the expansion. And from that point on, there's a quest line that will give you a new quest every second week, by the sounds of things. So these are going to be really scarce. This is going to be the true bottleneck of crafting. It's going to be these Sparks of Ingenuities. Additional stages of this quest line will become available to you every few weeks. After 5 of them have been earned, you will gain the ability to make more Sparks of Ingenuity when you find a rare drop around the Dragon Isles. There's like a bottle of essence or something. You take it back to a machine, and that machine turns it into a Spark of Ingenuity for you. That's been referenced as going to be something similar to the Legion legendaries. For some of the more old school players of the game at this point, does playing in Legion make you old school now? I don't know. Legion is a fair, like 4 or 5 years ago now, Legion. If you played in Legion, you might remember the legendary acquisition system from there, which was interesting. There was meant to be some like behind the scenes system so that the more you played the game, the more activities you did, whether it be world quests or dungeons or killing raid bosses, whatever you did, there was an ever increasing chance of you getting a legendary. And then once you got one, your luck chance of getting another one kind of reset and went back to 0. And you know, the more you did, eventually you'd get another one. And so they kind of drip fed them to you. And they've already said that these Sparks of Ingenuity, once you've earned your first 5 at least, are going to work in this similar fashion. To upgrade your equipment to heroic and mythic item level, you will need 10 primal focus or 10 concentrated primal focus. Then combine them with some primal chaos. These will then make the final reagents, these final reagents can only be obtained in heroic or mythic raids, the highest levels of Mythic Plus, and highly rated PvP. So unless you are strictly engaging in some of the top-end, high-end content, your crafted gear still is not going to be of heroic or mythic item level. You do need to compete in these areas of play to be able to get the reagents needed to improve your crafted gear. One of the biggest things I've seen on many, especially comments on the YouTube videos is arguing against the fact that crafters are going to be able to make mythic gear. They will, but only if they're already engaging in mythic content. You cannot be a dude just standing around in Orgrimmar or Stormwind or wherever, just crafting away all day, slowly but surely filling yourself out with mythic gear. That's unfortunately not how it's going to work. For those who don't do the content, reaching a high level of renown with each of the faction will allow you to acquire a primal infusion. There's 4 major factions, by the way. The optional reagent that upgrades your equipment to heroic item level. So Blizzard's kind of, Blizzard's halfway system for this is that if you do end up being that crafter that just chills in the capital city, doesn't actually, for whatever reason, doesn't really enjoy Mythic Plus, isn't in an active raiding guild, maybe only does the odd pug from time to time. If you are one that is pushing your renown and getting your factions to top renown, the last reward on each of the 4 renown paths is one of these primal infusions. So at least you'll have access to like 4 pieces of heroic gear. You won't be getting anything mythic quality, but you will at least get something in the 400 item level range. What do we got next then? Alchemy. There's a little bit for alchemy then. This video is turning into quite a long video. I didn't realise this post was quite so long. Let's see how long it goes. Alchemy and vials in the Dragon Isles then. You will find many strange and wondrous concoctions to discover during alchemical experimentations on the Dragon Isles. One of these is the standardization of the vial as an innovative replacement for the flask. I wish they'd have chose a different word. We already have vials. Now we have files. They practically sound the same. Files work very similar to flasks, lasting through death and counting as both a battle and a guardian elixir. The main difference is that they tend to require about half the reagents to craft, but last half as long. And 2 can be drunk together to get the duration of a flask for extra flexibility. So they're cheaper, they're half the price, but they last half as long, but you can use 2 of them. I've looked at this in great detail, and I'm going to be brutally honest, I probably am quickly coming to the conclusion that many of you probably are as well. What's the point? Honestly, I don't think there is. I think Blizzard were just trying to get away from the fact that in certain periods of time during the expansion, flasks tend to get quite expensive, and I think that's a little bit off-putting for people to buy a bunch of them. Maybe they, integrated this weird sort of cutting everything in half system to make the per unit price cheaper. There's definitely some psychology in that. If you've got, if you've got some expertise IRL in psychology, you will understand that if a per unit price is less, people feel, less put out by buying them, even if they end up spending the same. I'm sure there's some logic in there anyway. Alchemists who choose to specialize in vials will discover the secret to making vials last significantly longer for them. Yeah, spec trees. You can spec into making your vials last significantly longer again. I think previously they lasted 2 hours. Please correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think they flasks lasted 2 hours by default if you were an alchemist. You can spec into alchemy. It does mean by putting spec points in that direction, though, you might be giving up something else. But at least you can still achieve the same thing. Crafting stations then. Oh, this is an interesting one. This is one that I've not been best pleased with. I kind of understand thematically why crafting stations are a thing. It pushes all of the crafters into certain locations. It also means for some special items, often the intermediate items, you have to go to remote locations to craft those. It's just I know it's an RPG and I know it's an MMO, but it's just an inconvenience, especially since some of them are hidden in dungeons. That's going to get really annoying. We've been able to kind of avoid that whilst testing on the beta, because there's been like generic crafting tables wherever you can do crafting on the beta. But when the game goes live, you are going to need to be near one of these crafting stations. I suspect people will start complaining about this pretty quickly, especially when they realise you've got to haul ass into a dungeon just to craft a few items. Could be a bit of a pain, but we'll see. Most advanced Dragon Isles crafting recipes will require you to be at these new crafting stations. You will find many of them scattered about the regions of the Dragon Isles for your convenience. It was relatively convenient being able to craft from wherever Blizzard, just FYI. Once you reach the main city of Valdrakken, you'll find a large profession hub which includes all of the crafting stations, as well as some vendors and some trainers. The Artisans Consortium also has crafting order representatives located in the city, and even has convinced some auction house representatives to set up shop in the area as well. This is one of the benefits of Valdrakken. Valdrakken, the main city, does actually now have an auction house in it. That's available for all, by the way, not like we had in the past few expansions where you had to be an engineer to use it. No, the auction house is generic. The auction house can be used by anybody. It is located quite far away from the rest of the hustle and the bustle. It's near the inn and it's near the bank, which is kind of convenient, but it's on the, it's the opposite side from where all the crafting is going to happen. So expect to do some trips all the same, but at least it's in the same city. Let's be honest, there'll be long boys kicking about though, right? Surely. I'll just press the... Yeah, I don't have a long boy. Ignore me. Reagent bags then. Let's take a look at what they've got to say about the reagent bags. With the introduction of quality to crafting and gathering, additional inventory updates have been made regarding professions. To help out the crafters, we've introduced a new bag, the reagent bag. Reagent bags can only hold reagents and follow the same rules as the reagent bank. These new bags will also exist in a new dedicated bag slot, allowing for a larger amount of inventory space to devote to your gathered and crafting needs. You are absolutely going to need this space, by the way. There's 3 qualities for everything, meaning that it's not going to be too uncommon for you to have 2 or maybe even 3 times the amount of stuff for your professions in your bags. If you are running out of bag space between all of your gear and all of your reagents previously, you are absolutely going to be screaming for more inventory space. Even with this new bag, they're not particularly big. I think the biggest reagent bag we're getting is 36 slots, and the biggest regular bag slot is going up to 34. They're giving us, what's that, like 2 more bonus slots? It's not a lot. I was really hoping when we first heard about this reagent bag that we'd get some monstrously big 1,000 slot bag or something, but hey, maybe next expansion, right? In addition to this new reagent bag, the maximum stack size for most of the crafted and gathered items in Dragonflight has also been increased. Gathering reagents stack up to 1,000, up from 200, and most crafted consumables stack up to 200 from 20. So your potions and flasks and stuff are going to stack a little bit higher. This is great until you end up with 1 of 3 different types of fish, taking up 3 slots all the time. You have no idea where the hell you got them from, but they keep finding their ways into your bags. Trust me, inventory is going to be a bit of a pain. Prospecting and milling updates then. What have they got to say about this? With the new profession updates, now milling and prospecting recipes are now listed in each expansion specific version of alchemy and jewel crafting that you have learned. These recipes will allow you to select which ore or herb you wish to mill or prospect from that expansion, and then hit create or create all to consume as many or as few of them as you want in a single click. This caught a few people off guard when they originally announced this long time ago at the beginning of the alpha. If you press the create all button, you can sit back, you can put your feet up, you can go make a sandwich, but you still have to wait for them to craft individually. The other thing to note is that in Dragonflight, both prospecting, both milling, you don't have mass mill, you don't have mass prospect anymore. You have to prospect 5 at a time instead of 20 at a time that we kind of got quite accustomed to. So naturally your prospecting and your milling is much slower. Scribes have been complaining about this since day 1. That creating inks just takes way too long because you've got to mill all of the herbs 5 at a time. You've then got to turn the pigments into inks. Crafting speed is a new stat though. Maybe that's by design, right? You've got to stack up that crafting speed. You'll also find that the basic version of milling and prospecting, where you directly target a stack of reagents, is completely gone, replaced by this more convenient means of milling and prospecting. This means any of you guys that have been using like milling macros or prospecting macros might need to take a little bit of a look at those, see if they still work. I've not tested that sort of stuff, but since it's in the crafting UI now, it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward to do. Professional equipment then. How much more have we got of this? I'm keen to not make this video end up pushing past the hour mark. That would be absolutely ridiculous. Profession equipment then. Players will now be able to gain profession-specific equipment to enhance their gameplay and show off their crafting pride. In this new system, most professions have 3 slots for equipment, 1 tool and 2 accessories. These slots provide a dedicated place for you to put your profession equipment. You will no longer need to keep a hammer in your inventory if you're a blacksmith, or switch your weapon with your fishing rod when you want to fish. Ironically though, jewel crafters do still need silly things like jewel crafting kits and whatever. It's not a perfect system. But you get 3 profession bits of equipment. To paraphrase a lot of what they say here, it's cool, it has transmog appearances, by the way, just saying. The profession equipment is definitely something that you're going to want to eventually look to sort of min-max a touch. There's 2 tiers currently, at least for the launch of launch of Dragonflight. There's 2 tiers, your green uncommon profession equipment and then a rare version of it. If you happen to be a blacksmith or a tailor, there is 1 epic pattern available. But for the majority, it's a tier 1 or a tier 2 profession equipment. The main reason you're going to want to deck yourself out in some of this, though, is it does give you plus stats. It gives you plus skill bonuses, plus it gives you this inspiration, plus it gives you this resourcefulness. It does go a long way to make your crafting just more efficient. So you definitely want to get on board with this. And it looks cool, which always helps, right? Okay, recrafting and artisan's metal. The juicy part. The juicy part. I've got dry mouth. I need to have a drink. Recrafting allows you to take Dragon Isle's crafted gear and take another shot at crafting it. It requires the original item and then a small amount of the original reagents that went into it. Plus, in Dragon Isle's crafting, a special profession earned reagent known as artisan's metal. Boy, oh boy, has this stuff caused massive debates over the last few days and weeks. So much so that Blizzard have come in and they've tweaked and tuned the quantities of it that we get quite aggressively in the last few days. You are never going to have enough artisan's metal as a crafter, and this has led people to quite quickly try and find as many ways as possible to get access to it, especially when we get into that cycle of no longer are we like crafting pieces of gear afresh. We're primarily switching our focus into recrafting everybody's gear, upgrading it. Okay, you've been in the raid, you've got your optional reagents, you want to up the item level of your crafted gear. Give it back to me, let me have another blast at it. I'm now more skilled, I can now create those higher quality pieces of gear. This transaction and this process of recrafting is what's going to use this artisan's metal. And I suspect it's going to be possibly the biggest use for it eventually. There are some one-time things that your artisan's metal is used for, namely the profession tools. Your tier 2 profession tools use an ungodly amount of artisan's metal, often between 2 to maybe even as high as 400 artisan's metal per item. So that gets expensive real quickly when you have 3 slots and you might have 2 professions. So you're looking at 6 pieces of gear there. But recrafting, though, allows you to add, remove, or change out the optional reagents in any of the gear. The optional reagents that are replaced or removed will be destroyed in the process. It also allows you to raise the quality of the gear further if you can craft it at higher skill than when it was originally made. I might do a dedicated video on recrafting because it's been figured out by some very clever people in the community that when you craft an item through a work order, the game remembers exactly what went into making that piece of gear. Meaning if people were using low quality components when making that item initially, because either they were cheaper, they already had them, or they didn't really know that they were going to want to upgrade it at a later date, or they just, were not aware that the quality made that much of a difference. The game kind of remembers the materials that were used, and when you offer it back to a crafter to have it recrafted, it might take that recrafter a few goes to actually bring that piece of gear back up to speed. You may not see great success with recrafting initially until the game has sort of had enough bonus materials through this recrafting system to sort of mean that, right, okay, now this piece of gear is at its true top quality. Now we can push it into a next item level bracket, for example. Recrafting definitely needs some detail to be put into it. For many people, I genuinely do think a lot of people are going to be mind blown with how this recrafting system works. It's really clever. It's really clever how it works, by the way, but it's not intuitive. And this is a big issue for me. I really want the systems in the game to be intuitive. It's one of the biggest issues I had with the crafting order system in the first place, was that it was just lots of information and it was just confusing. The recrafting system, this is going to be a bit of a peach for sure. As mentioned above, though, the artisan's metal is required for recrafting. This is a reagent that is soulbound and can only be earned in limited quantities through various crafting and gathering activities. During a crafting order, either the customer or the crafter can provide it. Besides its use in recrafting, artisan's metal also has other profession-centric uses. Some of these are for crafting high-end profession equipment. Illustrious Insight, that finishing reagent I alluded to a long time ago in the video now. Illustrious Insight is the finishing reagent that bumps your skill. Top tier, really hardcore min-max crafters are going to need to use Illustrious Insight to make those best of the best pieces of gear. If you want mythic item level, customized stats, embellishments, if you want the full 9 yards on your piece of crafted gear, that crafter is almost always going to have to use one of these Illustrious Insight finishing reagents to achieve that piece of gear. It also has some other profession benefits for consumables as well. This is going to mean that artisan's metal is highly valuable to anybody with professions, and that you'll want to judiciously choose how to use it. Very, very true, Blizzard. This was actually quite a cool little article. A lot of this they've copy and pasted from articles in the past, but not everybody keeps up with the news. This is why I thought it'd be useful to go through this. I entirely did not realize that it would take me the best part of an hour to go through this. So if you've stuck through the video, I hope you learned something. I hope this was useful to you. Please let me know. You can let me know by giving the video a thumbs up. That really does help for the algorithm. And at this point, we're only a couple of days away from Dragonflight going live, so it's preparation time for me. I'm a busy bee at the moment. I'm working on things like profession leveling guides at the moment. Those will be out soon, TM. Next few days, hopefully before the launch. So if you want to get your professions leveled up nice and quickly once Dragonflight goes live, doesn't matter which profession you choose, I've got you covered. So make sure you've hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for that one. But it's now nearly 2 o'clock in the morning, boys and girls. I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do all of this again tomorrow because it's really fun. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Have fun. I'll catch you all next time. Peace.